we not just roam around in stores? Story 1, I'm gonna say probably high theft store, and dollar stores are also very paranoid about theft in general. It's commonly targeted for reselling at a higher price. Like I know some of their stores ban school-age kids, don't let people walk around with backpacks, and they also check their employees' bags before they leave after their shift as a strict policy. Story 2, I used to work at Dollar Tree. Shoplifting is extremely common there, and since you showed no interest in buying, you were highly suspicious and statistically likely to be a shoplifter. The numbers were against you in this situation. Story 3, you absolutely can, but with a store the size of Dollar Tree, it's likely people will begin to get suspicious if you're spending a long time there with no indication you're shopping. I feel like stores like Target or Walmart are far more conducive to just walk around in. Story 4, use the phrase "I'm browsing," rather than "I'm just hanging around." Browsing implies you're shopping, but not really looking for something specific. "I'm just hanging around" implies you have no intention to buy and are loitering, which can be banned. I'd also use a bigger store for getting out of the house. I go to the grocery or a Walmart to roam and vaguely shop. Story 5, 3 things you were in a small store. If you were in a large big box store, you could walk around all you want. America is dealing with a big shoplifting problem nowadays, and stores like that get stolen from a lot, so the clerk was just trying to make sure you were a legit customer. Even though the clerk was just doing his job, he was kind of about it. Maybe don't go hanging around there again, at least just to avoid that guy. Story 6, it's totally normal to just look around a store, but I would tell people you are looking around or just browsing. They might look for trouble if you say you're hanging around. I'm sorry that guy was into you, it was completely unnecessary. Story 7, Dollar Tree. That's not usually a store one wanders because of boredom. Walmart or Target, sure, heck most places aren't going to care at all, but the Dollar Tree near you apparently cares. Story 8, yeah, I mean there's kind of an appropriate amount of time you can be in a store. I window shop all the time, but if I need to kill a lot of time, the bigger the more big box the store the better. Starts to get awkward suspicious after a while. Story 9, OP pretty much presents themselves as being the archetype of a person who would be suspicious to an employee, and then wonder what the problem is. Poor innocent them, yeah. Story 10, at a dollar store, supermarket, or grocery store, it's generally expected you have a cart and start accumulating things to buy. Wandering for 10 minutes without buying anything looks awkward suspicious, particularly in a high crime area. If you were in a mall or general shopping area, walking around for 10 minutes is fine. Story 11, the employee at Dollar Tree was definitely finding you suspicious due to your behavior, and then again based on your answer, it's not normal to walk around the aisles of a Dollar Tree without buying anything. Story 12, you're allowed to shop or browse with the apparent intention of buying, but now you're not allowed to just hang out. Why would a store want people who have no intention of buying clogging up the aisles and making it harder for actual customers to buy things? Also, most people don't just hang around in stores for no reason, so he probably was suspicious that you were stealing or doing something you shouldn't be doing. It's fair for the employees to ask people that are clearly not shopping to leave the store. Story 13, I walk around stores aimlessly all the time. Nobody has ever cared. You were likely at a store with a high theft or vagrancy issues. Every woman I know goes to Target when they don't know what to do. Story 14, you can certainly, to an extent of course, but your response was strange. Just hanging out implies loitering for no purpose. Sat you're browsing next time, or just hang out in a bigger store like Lowe's or Walmart. Dollar Tree is not really a store you just hang out and shop in usually. Story 15, Dollar Tree is a store for the owners to make money selling things, not a hangout spot for people that are bored. Saying you're hanging out makes it sound like you're a teenager that's going to cause trouble or are waiting for your drug dealer. As numerous others have pointed out, no thanks. I'm just looking is the universal code word for please leave me alone, or alternatively no thanks. I'm doing fine when asked if you need help in the store. It's not really a lie since you are in fact looking and are doing fine, but it's not an outright message to the manager that you have no intention of buying something. Story 16, it's up to the store owner. It's normal to walk around a store. You may garner less suspicious if you say you are just browsing and not just hanging out. Story 17, shoplifting has become rampant and is infuriating for underpaid staff who just have to watch it happen. Shoplifting hurts everyone, including lowering wages. Story 18, next time go to a mall or Target or something. It's much more common to walk around these places. Plus dollar stores have a high rate of theft and a low rate of people hanging out, which might very look suspicious. But in general this isn't super weird. He very well could have just been a. Story 19, in a dollar store you are more likely to get stopped. Generally they're in low income, high crime areas where theft is common. The rule of thumb is that you don't hassle your customers, but when you're running a dollar store you gotta protect your inventory. Story 20, people loitering in dollar stores look like thieves. That is why the store person was concerned about you. Next time don't say that you are roaming. That sounds suspicious. Say you are duet looking. Story 21, while in school I worked part-time in an audio store. Just hanging out was not a thing for the most part, but people did occasionally try to for whatever crazy reason. Just looking around, cool, just hanging out, no, I'm completely miffed at the idea of just hanging out at a dollar store. Solid WTF. Story 22, out of all the stores to roam, you chose a Dollar Tree. Why not a mall or something? That's a bit odd to say you're just hanging around a dollar store. Story 23, usually you're totally free to do that, but dollar stores are both frequent targets for shoplifters and also chronically understaffed, so I kinda get it. Dude probably just didn't want to deal with it today. definitely would suggest not saying hanging around in the future though, say you're just looking or browsing instead. Story 24 Browsing is allowed. You don't have to buy anything, but going on with the express purpose not to purchase anything is loitering and not allowed. Even if you're not carrying money, don't tell them you're not going to buy anything. Story 25 Going to a dollar store to hang out will be a good way to look suspicious. You certainly could have said just looking and maybe have gotten a better reaction. There are definitely types of stores that encourage browsing, but the Dollar Tree isn't one of them. Story 26 Stores can ask you to leave for any reason they want, and if you don't leave it's a crime. If you feel like walking around a store, maybe try a mall or Walmart. They are big enough it may not matter to them. Story 27 Dollar Tree isn't the best place to browse. They have a high amount of loss due to theft. Most people have already mentioned this, but in the future, you may want to respond with no thank you, I'm just looking. Story 28 It's not normal to straight out tell an employee you're loitering, so not surprised he looked you over to see if you were stealing because that's some weird behavior for sure. Story 29 Employees are taught in stores that if you talk to people, like saying hi or ask them if they need help, it'll stop some people from shoplifting. Every retail job I had did this. Story 30 Just say no thanks. I'm good. Saying you're just hanging around is admitting that you're loitering. I'm sure they have a store policy against that. Story 31 That is called loitering if you have no intention of buying anything. And yes, it is a criminal act in most places. It also is very suspicious and looks like you are casing things to try and steal. Story 32 You did just admit to a place of business that you had no intention of buying something, so of course they don't want you in there, but I feel like how long you were roaming is relevant. If you've been in there for 5, 10 minutes then they were being unreasonable. It's not unusual for people to browse, even if they don't end up buying anything. If you've been in there for an hour, then I can see why they would want to check on your intentions and usher you along if you're not actually shopping. Shoplifting is an issue for most stores, as well as getting in the way and/or making actual shoppers uncomfortable if you're just randomly standing in or wandering up and down the sides, especially if you're a man and the majority of the staff is young females. If you want to get out of the house and kill time, maybe wander through a few stores, 10 or 15 minutes in each one. Or at least, if you're approached by staff, say you're browsing instead of saying you're just hanging around. Story 33 TBH I don't think it's very common for people to just wander around in dollar stores, so the employee might have thought you were a shoplifter. I doubt it's against any rules though, or they may have just been having a bad day since they work at a dollar store. Story 34 He was just being you can absolutely do that. That store may have really high theft though, so they may feel like they need to be more dickish. Just don't go there anymore. Story 35 Little surprised. The dollar stores often attract people hoping to encounter a good deal on something without having any list of products that they came to acquire. He probably did his corporation a disservice. Story 36 While wandering around stores is normal, wandering around a Dollar Tree is not normal. Vast majority of people wandering around a Dollar Tree are there to steal something. Story 37 I go to Dollar Tree all the time, and I have never ever had an employee ask me if they can help me. They go out of their way to ignore all customers. Story 38 Next time say I'm just browsing. This means you don't need help but might buy something. Use this even if there is no chance you'll buy something. I'm just hanging around means you absolutely will not be buying anything and are there explicitly to take up space. Story 39 It's because it's Dollar Tree. They probably thought you were trying to steal something. Same goes for Dollar General and other high theft stores, which tend to be the discount stores. Story 40 As others have said, you should say that you're just looking. It's not uncommon for people to browse without the intent of buying in a lot of types of stores like boutiques, but it's uncommon for someone to browse at a dollar store. I don't think the person working there should have given you a hard time about it, but I think theft is a problem for them and they were suspicious of someone spending a lot of time in there and not buying anything. Story 41 You have enough employees at your local Dollar Tree to actually notice the customers. Mine are always understaffed and they just leave boxes of merchandise in the aisles. Story 42 Next time say, I'm just browsing. I wonder if this is a racial thing too. I have literally told clerks I am just killing time while waiting for my hubby and they didn't say anything. Story 43 You can, but you can also be asked to leave for non-discriminatory reasons. And it sounds like your behavior was reasonably suspicious to the employee. Story 44 It may depend on frankly the neighborhood and your demographics. If you're teenish aged or a minority you're more likely to get that response, if it's a lower income area too. Story 45 Sounds like the employee was a little rude, but just for future reference, tell them you're looking around or just browsing. That way, they know you're at least considering buying something even if you don't plan on it. Others have said this, but unfortunately, Dollar Tree and other similar stores are usually targets for shoplifting, so their employees are already on guard looking for potential shoplifters. Just something to be aware of. Story 46 Really depends. I was just looking in a local bookstore about a year ago and got screamed at to leave and that I was not following their bus model. I had been buying their coffee every week, but apparently that's not valid business. Story 47 Yeah man, you just tell them no, thank you and continue doing what you're doing. Always a good idea to keep your hands out of your pockets when you're loitering in a store. It is suspicious. Story 48 Main reason I'm still mad major isn't 24 hours anymore. I work nights, so when I was bored on an off day I would just eat an edible and put my headset on and roam around for an hour or two. I would always end up buying stuff and I genuinely can't believe they aren't losing out on sales. Story 49. Most stores just looking is fine and great. Dollar Tree is so cheap they expect people to buy, and they are super alert for shoplifters. The same store in different locations you can get hassled or profiled if they have a perceived or actual theft problem. Story 50. You used the wrong phrasing. It's normal to roam in stores, but they don't want you loitering without looking kind of deal. I'm surprised they even said that though. It's a Dollar Tree, no one should care. Story 51. Absolutely can. Obviously not looking sus with a backpack or something. I freak out the dollar store, the yellow one that spreads like herpes, a lot by bringing my own bag. I'm just shopping. If I want to buy nothing but a box of Sour Patch Kids, who cares? Story 52. You told him you were just hanging out. If you had said you were just looking, it would be different, because that indicates you might buy something. Just hanging out means you have no intention of buying anything. In that case, the salesperson was correct. It isn't a library or a park. Even in a library, people don't really hang out with no intention of looking at any books. I mean, it's kind of weird. Story 53. They're right. Go to a coffee shop or a library if you need a change of scenery. Dollar stores attract weirdos and sketchy people, so wandering around aimlessly makes employees think you are one of the many people who steal from their store. Choose a different store or location next time, and if asked you can say you're just browsing or just looking, but even in a dollar store that's suspicious. I hate to say it, but what is your race? Sadly, many brown and black people do face racism and discrimination in the US. If you are non-white and the employee is white, it's possible they were more suspicious of you based on race. Story 54. I think what put him off was that you said you were just hanging around. If you said, no, I'm fine, just looking, that might have been more acceptable, because that at least gives the impression that at some point you might buy something. Story 55. You can definitely just walk around and browse items in stores, though it is common behavior for thieves to walk around perusing items with no real goal. Most shoppers are looking for specific items and go straight to it, so someone walking around casually without putting any items in a basket or cart can indeed look suspicious. Also, assuming you are a foreigner, you may have been profiled a bit. Story 56. I'm new here. You mean new to the US? Sounds like what happened here, aside from the store employee being a bit of a, was a nuance of language. I'm just hanging out makes it sound like you have no intention to buy anything. Even if it's true, it's an unusual thing to say to a store clerk. Just looking or just browsing leaves open the possibility you could become a paying customer and is more warmly received. Story 57. You can't just hang out, but you can just browse. This isn't just a verbal thing. It's expected that you'll be looking at items for sale when you're in a store. If you're not, it arouses suspicion. You're either stealing or up to something even worse, looking for children, getting ready for violence, etc. Story 58. It's a Dollar Tree. The place already attracts a sketchier crowd than Waffle House at 2 a.m. If you aren't buying, they're going to assume you're stealing. Story 59. It really depends on the store. If a store has a problem with lots of shoplifting, then they would not want you there just hanging out. If the store dies but have much of a shoplifting problem, then you could hang around for a while before being asked to leave. If you went to a department store, Macy's, Kohl's, Dillard's, etc., you could probably hang around all you want. If approached by an employee, just say that you are browsing. If they can see that you are not stealing or bothering anybody, you should be okay. Again, each store is different, and just hanging around a store did look weird to most Americans. Story 60. I have some spare time to kill while my spouse shops down the street, so I stopped in here to check it out. I'm new to this area. As you wave your hand in a general neighborhood direction. It's not a library. This was rude and inhospitable. They shouldn't have said it to you. Story 61. You just tell people you're looking. That's kind of the protocol. I find it weird though that somebody came up to you. All my time SD Dollar GL Generals or dollar store kind of places, I've never had an employee come up to me. They're always swamped doing other things, and there's usually like 2 employees even if there's 20 people in the store, one running the register and the other handling a store that always looks like a mess. I didn't think they had time to come up and bother people. Just weird. Story 62. I'd be uncomfortable as a store worker to have some random person hanging out, not looking or planning to purchase anything. I'd be checking for any signs of a weapon. In the last several years there's been dozens of massacres in stores. Jacksonville shooter who killed 3 used to work at a dollar store. Story 63. In the US that isn't really done. Americans see standing around as a sign something is wrong, because you should always be busy, thus making you seem important. If you are over 21 you can go to a mall and find a seat for maybe 10 minutes before security may clock you as looking suspicious. Story 64. You're allowed to look around with the idea that the store is hoping you're buying something. Of course they can't do anything if you don't buy anything, but if you say you are just hanging out, they know you aren't buying anything, and thus you are only a liability to have in the store. So like others have said, just tell them you're looking for something you need or browsing. It's like an unwritten rule. Story 65. I've worked in DT and DG, including as management. You absolutely can, however there's absolutely a profile. Employees know how much the inventory is off on a regular basis due to theft. They know beyond doubt about certain patterns, and your innocent behavior matched to one of the patterns. I've seen it handled various ways. What different levels of manage push for frontline employees to do about it is entirely contradictory and insane. Trying to give a very honest and sensible answer to a kind of understandably vague question. Speaking as someone with no skin in the game at this point, BC, I will never work retail again. Just smile and calmly say, I know you're doing your job. I'm not here to steal. I just need to get out of the house and kill some time while spending only a couple bucks. I've known some employees who will get on a friendly basis, and then again I've known some wacko employees who will show they're crazy. But just introduce yourself and be friendly and empathize with the fact they're in an impossible position. In the long run I think it will work out best. If they go crazy, just cooperate, save the receipt, note the exact time, and press a complaint. By the way, the DT employee manual says their business model is have completely unpredictable inventory and shuffle around where it is shelved. The term is joy of the hunt. It's supposed to be a positive thing that enhances the customer experience, so use that info as you see fit. I personally hated the philosophy, and it's a small part of why I burned out. Story 66. If you are walking around too long and clearly not getting items for purchase, it can look like you are casing the store, which means getting an idea how it's run, how many people work there, and where the cameras are so you can commit a future robbery. Bottom line is you were looking out of place to the store worker since you weren't actually shopping, and that gave them concern. Story 67. Normally you would respond to that question with you are just looking, not that you are just hanging around. You can walk around a store and not buy stuff, but you should at least pretend to be browsing with the possibility of buying. Story 68. Never tell them you're hanging out. Either say no, I'm good, or I'm browsing, or some other BS excuse. If you're hanging out with no intention of buying, they'll suspect you of something else or try to get you for loitering or something. Shoplifting is a huge problem in these stores, to the extent many have removed their self-checkout options. Story 69. My daughter recently dragged me into a FYE, and a snotty employee did the same thing to me. I told her 3 times no thanks, I'm just looking. Finally I said, look, I don't want to be in your boring store, but I am waiting on my daughter, do you mind not bothering me? She actually seemed offended. Story 70. I work in a grocery store in a retirement community. I would swear there are a lot of people, especially old dudes, who walk around in the store for something to do. They'll push a cart around and maybe eventually get around to throwing something in the basket. Mostly I'm okay with it. Story 71. Former assistant manager of a Family Dollar. Given this was over 20 years ago, but theft in dollar stores is extremely common. Both my Family Dollar and the other 3 in my network had serious issues with theft. On one occasion I was forced to call the cops on several repeat offenders. One of those same offenders came back to lodge a complaint, and I was forced to call the police a second time. Then that woman called me while I was closing, and after several attempts to explain to her that I am not the one who makes the rules, I was forced to unplug the phone and go home that night. I can't speak for every dollar store, but the one that I worked for and the other 3 that I worked with all had the same issue. Story 72. I do this all the time, like everywhere. You messed up and told them you weren't buying. Next time say something like no thank, I'm good, have a nice shift. Nicer places, no thank you, you have some really interesting items. Hope you have a great day, they're just doing their job. Assist customers, loss prevention. Story 73. When employees in stores ask if I need help, I just say no. Nothing more. Why? I'm introvert. I would rather search the entire store on my own than follow some random employee around who doesn't know either. They like hearing no because it doesn't mean they have to try to lead me to something they can't find either. Story 74. I work retail. When someone just walks around aimlessly, it sends up red flags. I'm just hanging around sounds like I'm just loitering, maybe waiting for someone to not be looking at me so I can shove stuff in my pockets. I'm just looking right now sounds like I'm not sure what I want to buy right now. I'm waiting for something to jump out at me. Story 75. Next time say you're just looking, or that you're looking for something but haven't been able to find what you need. Just walking around a store is generally frowned upon in America because it looks sketchy and it'll give people the impression that you're trying to steal something. Me and my sister walk around Walmart all the time, but we always make sure to have some type of conversation related to buying something. It seems like someone is watching us even if we don't plan on getting anything, just so people won't accuse us of stealing. Story 76. Dollar General stores in my hometown aren't located in the nicest neighborhoods. They probably have issues with shoplifting, and just hanging out there would set off all kinds of alarms inside the employees' heads. They figure you are going to try and rob them or are a serial killer. Story 77. Saying just hanging around does sound sketchy, as does looking like you're just hanging around, and more so when you've been hanging around for quite a long time in a smallish store like a Dollar Tree. But next time just saying nah, I'm just looking, and leave it at that, but then wrap it up and head out. Barnes & Noble is a great place to hang out when bored. Gather some magazines or something, grab a coffee if you can, wander around and find something interesting to read, and chill. Story 78. Malls or more niche shops like game stores, card shops, and comic stores are all pretty okay to visit and walk around. Dollar store isn't the worst place to go, but you'll probably get looks as if you're up to something. Story 79. No, it is not even remotely normal to go wandering around in stores. The sole purpose for allowing the public to enter is so they may select merchandise, purchase it, and leave with it. Spaces for wandering around are typically located outdoors, and government-owned, like city parks and public sidewalks. If you look at and around the entrance doors, there's usually a bunch of signs. Among them, there will likely be one that explicitly says no loitering. That is what roaming around the store for funsies is, and why they were giving you the stink eye. Story 80. Loitering is typically not permitted in and outside of businesses unless there's a public space designated for it. Even then you'll probably have to buy something to use it. Yes, they'll think you're planning to steal. Story 81. Looking around is fine. Loitering isn't legal in many circumstances. If they think you're just in the store for the ambient temperature, then they think you are homeless and going to steal. In that situation where you just want to be inside somewhere, go to a public library. Story 82. You can also just say no thank you if an employee says can I help you, I generally just say no thanks, I'm good. They know most people want to just be left alone, they're being polite. Saying you're just hanging around implies something different. Story 83 Loitering Laws. It's seldom enforced, but if you don't have a goal they don't want you in there, you might be taking away from someone else who could use the space as a paying customer, or you could be stealing or casing the place. Story 84 There are a lot of thieves in America. You want to walk, go to a mall. You can also walk in parks. You can also say I'm deciding on something or I'm on a really tight budget and thinking about what I really need. Story 85 I lived in NJ for a few years. We had a huge snowstorm that dumped 2 snow on the ground. The snow in my neighborhood side streets was cleaned by some dude in a pickup truck, not a municipal snowplow couldn't come close to getting out. I had an extreme case of cabin fever and slogged the mile to a Best Buy which was on a main thoroughfare. Predictably there were 3 or 4 employees and basically no customers. I walked around for a while but didn't want to buy anything. I ended up sitting on a couch in front of the TV display section and watched almost the entire The Incredibles movie. The employees were a little leery of me but left me alone. At some point they approached and said they were closing early due to the main roads icing up threat, so I of course left without argument. Story 86 Well, most places have a no loitering rule. They are a business, they are there to make money. It is not a hangout spot. Hangout spots literally get paid for you to hang out. Stores are not getting paid for you to hang out. A lot of places won't actually say anything so people become delusional that it's okay but it's not. Yes, there will be situations where you go into a store and you don't find what you're looking for so you leave without buying things and they expect this, but it's not a hangout place. It is considered private property. That's something else people oftentimes forget. In fact, with the whole mask mandate came out, people just lost their fucking. People have become so accustomed to doing whatever they want and abusing retail places that they forgot that they can make their own rules. The retail stores, I mean, again it is private property. Just because they allow people to do things doesn't mean it's a person's right. Next time you want to walk around I would actually suggest a mall. An indoor mall, because you can walk around those hallways without actually going into the stores, because I'm assuming that was a reason you didn't go to a park or something outside. Story 87 Why would you even say that? You say I'm just looking, which means you may or may not buy something. It depends if you find something you like or not. Most people come out of a dollar store with at least one item. Story 88 Because of loitering laws and such, if you're not a potential customer, then the business could argue you are trespassing on private property. Also, deciding to just hang at a dollar store is a bit of a weird choice, so I'll definitely rouse some suspicion that you're up to no good. Story 89 Next time just smile and say no thanks, I'm just looking right now. Telling someone you're in their store and specifically not planning to use their services or buy their products is a bad idea. You want to dismiss their help without making them feel you are suspicious. Story 90 If you want to walk inside a store, pick a larger store like a Target or a warehouse store like Costco or Sam's. The aisles are larger and there's usually enough space for you to actually get some exercise done. And the ones I mentioned have food courts or snack centers, so you can stop and buy something cheap. Smaller stores are going to get suspicious if you're wandering, not looking at the merchandise, and getting in people's way. Indoor mall shopping centers are also good bets for walking. Story 91 You may not have noticed yet, but dollar stores, Dollar Generals etc., tend to be in poorer communities where they have higher crime rates. If there's a Waffle House around you know what I'm talking about. If you see a cigarette store chances are all those places been robbed by the same dude too. So people are naturally suspicious especially when you're just hanging around, which even if it was the truth people are gonna think who wants to hang out at a dollar store. Oh. Story 92 Depending on the area and type of store, the staff may be more suspicious of people being potential thieves. People usually won't do much about it other than maybe watch you unless you actually try to do something. Story 93 It is completely normal to just look around. I think he probably suspected you were stealing and was trying to chase you out. He was a suspicious twerp. Story 94 Tell them that you came here for one thing, but now you can't remember what it was, so you're roaming until it hits you when you finally see whatever you came in for. Story 95 Unfortunately, there are, whether or not certain groups want to admit it, issues with certain other groups doing certain types of things, but at the same time, at least for me, being from Jersey, I'd much rather hang around places like malls instead of dollar stores. Story 96 I worked in store security. When I worked at a store in an urban area, we really cracked down on loitering. When I worked out in the suburbs we couldn't care less. Story 97 A guy was coming into my local Dollar Tree and peeing in the candles. So yeah, I think the employees are a bit concerned about people who are just hanging out in the store. As others said, you just gotta say you are browsing. Story 98 I'm just looking, getting ideas, so you have to buy something. Oh, I will, just need time to browse is all. Lots to think about. Oh, of course, have a nice day, then browse for 15 minutes or so and walk out the door while staring down your adversary. What? They going to call the cops in on customers browsing for birthday party invites, allegedly.